We have Miss Jessie Bliss here, who works through Victor Support Services, and she's going to talk to you guys a bit about what she does and how she got to where she is today. So take it away, Jess.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am Jessie Bliss. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work with Victor Community Support Services. So Victor as an agency has been around since the late 60s, and we have approximately 25 sites throughout the state. I have been with Victor for just about 9.5 years. December will be my 9.5 year mark. And I chose to work for Victor because I was really drawn to the mission of the agency. So we have a mission. Our mission statement is to be a catalyst for sustained improvement in the lives of those we touch. So that means that we want to give people the tools they need to live better lives. And at the heart of me, that's really what I like to do. I like to help people live better lives. Our organization was founded by a man named Dave, and he grew up in the foster care and the orphanage system. So back in the 50s, 40s and 50s, we still had orphanages in the US, like widespread orphanages. And he had some really not great experiences. So because of that, he wanted to help kids who are going through those systems have better lives, so that they wouldn't have to go through the harsh things that he went through. So I was really drawn to the agency based on the mission and Dave's story, and I've built my career here. I started off with the agency as a behavior specialist, so just about to get my master's degree, but still had my bachelor's. So I started as a behavior specialist, was able to finish getting my master's degree, was able to then move into a clinician role where I was able to gain my hours for licensure. I became licensed about 5 years ago now. Worked for a while as a clinician, and then was able to move into a supervisor position. So over the course of my career, I've been able to really grow at Victor. I've been able to do a lot of different things and experience kind of like a lot of different opportunities in the field. In our region, Victor has probably a half dozen, at least a half dozen, maybe 10 different programs in the San Bernardino County. We do everything from birth to death. We see all age ranges. We see clients that are not very severe, but then we also have programs that see very severe and intense clients. So we have programs for little bitties who are in maybe like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, just teaching them about general mental health skills, and also teaching them how to social skills and how to not be a bully, how to be good little people. And then we have for the high school age kiddos and maybe young college students who are really trying to kind of figure out their lives and what they want to do with them, process some family stuff that's going on. And then we have super intensive programs. So programs that are either preventing kids from going into the hospital or helping them transition out of the hospital or residential placements. So we have a lot of different programs. I see the question, how to not get bullied. Yeah, so a little bit, but more about how to just not be bullies. Like, how do we be kind to other people, especially for littler kids, right? Like anything under like second grade and younger. Just teaching them about how do I, if I don't like what somebody's doing, how do I tell them in a nice way? How do I treat people kindly even when I'm in a bad mood? How do I, ask for help when things are going on at home and it's making me sad or frustrated or angry, or I can't focus in school? So we have a lot of different ways that we can work with little kids, and hopefully by teaching people, how to communicate their emotions better and what they're going through better, then we can prevent kids getting bullied too. But then also teaching them what can we do if we are getting bullied. So a lot of different things that we can go there. Good question. Let's see, what else do we want to know? Feel free to ask questions as they come up, either about me, about the agency, anything that you guys have questions about.
You guys are free to unmute. Jesse said since we're a small enough group, you can go ahead and just unmute if you'd rather just speak the question.
Yeah, so I know typing's not everybody's favorite. And sometimes it's easier to say things out loud because I can see all you guys. So I'll see if you guys unmute and you have a comment or a question. What else? So how did I get where I am today? So I got interested in psychology in high school. I took an AP Psych class and really fell in love with the field, really fell in love with kind of trying to understand why people do the things that they do. And then I went straight to a four-year university after high school, did my bachelor's in psychology, and I have a minor in philosophy. Really fell in love with philosophy, and that's kind of really helped influence how I do therapy. And then I did my master's in marriage and family therapy at Loma Linda, and Loma Linda will be here tomorrow to talk to you guys about their program. So that's pretty exciting for me. And then, yeah, got my educational. Huh?
I went to Loma Linda for my PT.
Oh, yay. See, all the cool kids went to Loma Linda. So what keeps me motivated daily, and is it personal experience? Can you I'll answer your first question, but clarify what you mean by your second question. So I really love getting to see people have their aha moments, like have things finally click for them, and then be able to make different choices to have better lives. Whether that's my staff members that I work with on a daily basis, whether that's the clients that I work with in therapy, whether that's students, because I teach as well. So, whatever that situation is, like that keeps me motivated. Like I shared in the panel discussion, seeing clients come back and give back to the community and, give back to the programs that help them, that's very rewarding too. I talk about like my baby bird coming back and getting to help other people, and that's just, it makes my heart happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trying to so you pronounce your name Jabriel, right? I think I heard that right. Jabriel?
Yes, it's Jabriel.
Jabriel, thank you. What did you mean by your second question? Is it personal experience?
Is what you went through as a child, your trauma and your life lessons that you learned from it, is that what drives you to your career now? Is that what was your first, was that your first motivation when you wanted to be what you are now?
Gotcha. Actually, it wasn't my direct experiences. It was the experiences of my friends. I was always that friend. I was always the person in my friend group that my friends came to talk to about their problems, whether it was problems with their parents, problems with other kids at school, problems with their siblings. I was always that person. So that's why I went into this. It wasn't until I got to my master's program when I really started realizing like things that I went through in my life were impacting me. And that's when I started really like diving into my own personal traumas and personal work, and really kind of was able to move through and work through some of that. But I think at the heart of it, yeah, there's always a piece of me who wants, kids and wants teenagers to have a better experience than I did. And if I can help guide somebody through that, through using my personal journey or through, helping them just figure out their own journey, then yeah, that's piece of that is that personal motivation too.
Yeah, so would you say that you don't necessarily have to have some major traumatic event in your life to want to help people? in
Correct.
mental health, right? You don't need to have that to be a behavioral health therapist or what have you.
Correct. Yeah. My mate, like the biggest traumas that have ever happened to me have happened as an adult, as a licensed professional. So, I think, yeah, you definitely don't have to have that background. Everybody gets here through a different journey. I don't think anybody has a perfect life. So I think we all have things that can impact our work in this field. And it's really helpful to be aware of that. Not all master's programs require you to do personal therapy, but I think all of them recommend that you do personal therapy during your master's program. Because it's just one of those things where you can learn by doing and you can learn by experiencing it. And by being a client, you understand what it's like to be a client. And that can help you be more empathic when you're working with people.
Right. So, and also sometimes we might not even realize the things that make us who we are or have affected us in some sort of way. We don't even realize it till we self-evaluate and look.
Mm-hmm.
We could think we had the perfect life or a good life and then realize, well, maybe that thing that happened way back when, I didn't even recognize it as such, that a negative effect could be, learned from that or whatever. So.
Oh yeah. And sometimes you don't even realize it till a client starts talking about something and like
Right.
a light bulb goes off in your head or something happens in your gut and you're like, ooh, that hit somewhere I didn't think it was gonna hit.
Right.
And then you have to, go back and kind of reflect on yourself. I think one of the things we didn't touch on earlier in the panel was that therapists need their own therapists. It's once you become a therapist, that doesn't mean that you don't seek therapy. It's definitely one of those things where you need to be able to have someone to vent to. You need someone to process with. I think a few different panel members touched on, we hear things that are not pretty on a daily basis. Like we're going through the worst experiences of people's lives with them almost on a daily basis. So it's really important to have our self-care, have our self-care like on point, but then it's also super important to have those people that I can reach out to. So whether that's my therapist, whether that's my coworkers, whether that's my friends who are therapists, like I need to have those people that I can process with when I need to process, because it's emotional work and things are going to impact you. We're going to hear sad things. We're going to be heartbroken. It's just a matter of keeping it together while you're with the client and then being able to go somewhere to let that out.
Yeah, healthcare in general, we're going to see a lot of tragic things, and maybe you could speak on how you actually keep that separate from your personal life. I know we say self-care, but are there other techniques that you use to keep that, what you're experiencing at work separate from your home life? Because we do that with just about any profession. We bring stuff home, but when you see and hear things like we do in healthcare, how do you keep that separated?
So one of the big fancy words for that is compartmentalizing. And I happen to be very good at compartmentalizing. So compartmentalizing is a fancy term for pretty much like you have these boxes in your brain, and work stays in the work box. And then when you're in the work box, there are sub boxes, right? So client A has their box, client B has their box, client C has their box. Because when you go into session, you really want to be focusing on who's in that room with you that moment. And if you're still thinking about the last session that you had, you're not going to be super effective for the current client that you're with. So part of it is just practice, and really getting used to saying, okay, like learning how to focus, learning how to block things out, learning how to be present is a big piece of that. One of the things that helps me is I kind of like, I do this little imagery in my head with a switch, right? So when I go in, I flip the last switch off, I turn the next switch on. But when I go home, I turn the switches off, all the switches off. So when I'm at home, I am focused on me and my home life, right? So I'm catching up with my friends, I'm rubbing my dog's belly, we're playing with toys, I'm doing my self-care activity. So I'm, exercising, I'm binge watching whatever I want to be binge watching at the moment. I read a lot. So that's one of my main coping skills too. But there are going to be times where you come home and you're thinking about that client, so you have to figure out, how can I process that for myself? So sometimes that means I have to break out my journal and write about what's going on and what are my thoughts and feelings about the client. Sometimes I'm talking to my therapy friends about that, like, oh my God, I had such a hard case today, you guys. Um, um, you know, I try not to talk, like, I don't talk to my family members about it. I don't talk to most of my friends about that type of stuff. I kind of only talk to my other friends who are therapists about those types of things, and try not to make it a primary conversation. Like, we talk about other things. Like, I need to get my mind off work
Mhm.
in some way, shape, or form. Do I believe that is the right way to go? I believe that is the right way for me. The right way is very subjective. So what's going to be right for me might not be right for others. I have a coworker he's just super fabulous at being able to like leave work at home. He goes home, he does his fishing, he plays with his dogs, he does fantasy football, he does his other stuff, and he maintains that he just doesn't think about work outside of work. Okay. We all have different ways of coping, and it's just a matter of figuring out what way works best for us. And a lot of that's trial and error, just trying different things and see what works for us.
Okay, so how do you react with your patients? Like, I asked this question earlier, and it's like everyone says like, oh, you have to like maintain yourself. You learn that in training, but at the end of the day, everyone's human.
Yes.
So, like, how do you react with your patients? Like, do you show them comfort? Do you show them happiness? Do you also input your emotions with them to like understand them? Because I know when I talk to people, I show my emotions. I tell them a way of like how I would do it, ask them how they would do it. I show like a lot of emotions, like especially in my face. So how do y'all like react with your patients?
So I kind of alluded to this earlier, but different styles of therapy or different schools of thought have different recommendations on this, right? So some therapists and some training programs say that you do not show emotion in session. You are a blank slate. You are there for the client, and you really just have to keep it in. I am not of that school. I am of the be authentic camp. So if I'm shocked by something, it's going to show on my face. I have a very expressive face. My face says things that I don't want it to all the time. So, but that is something that I make my clients aware of, and just let them know, like, look, sometimes this does things that I don't really know what's going on with, but feel free to ask me about it, or I'll let them know, like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. So I'm very authentic in session, but there's a difference between responding to the client's emotion and kind of like being human with them and making it about me. Right. So I never make the session about me and my feelings. Right. If I'm upset by something that they say, I keep that in unless it's something that we need. Like, I think it's something they need to talk about. Or if I'm shocked by something, I don't want it to come across as being judgy. Right. So it's very important to be aware of what's going on with you and why it's going on with you. But I've cried in session. I've hugged clients. I have, I mean, it's not like super popular, like super frequent, I should say, not popular, but, clients say stuff that really breaks your heart sometimes, and when you have the level of empathy that you need to be a therapist, sometimes hearing about that stuff is going to make you shed a tear. Right. And I think Dr. Olson made a comment along those lines, like, you can shed a tear in session, but you don't want to be like overwhelmed with grief to the point where the client is feeling awkward or the client is comforting you.
Right.
Because then it becomes about you and it's not about the client anymore. But I think a lot of clients feel comforted when their therapists show authenticity. But that's not every client. Some clients may feel like maybe they did something wrong, or they're going to feel really awkward if their therapist feels like that, or they take on a lot of guilt. You know, you're just going to have to know your client and gauge what you think their reaction would be.
Do you believe, like, okay, I know when like you're in the working force, you have to be professional, right? Because that's what it's all about. But do you like get comfortable, like with me, like I took a customer service class, and so I think it was like my freshman year of high school, and my teacher told me that I can't act, the way that I act. I have to be professional. I have to use professional language. Like I can't be myself, and I disagree with that so much. I had arguments with her like the whole year because I believe that everyone, like at the end of the day, everyone's human.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I change myself, the way I speak, the way I believe, the way I act? Because I'm a comforting person. I'm very hilarious. I'm very understanding. So why should I change the way I speak, just
Yeah.
because I'm in a different environment? Like, don't get me wrong, I have amazing people skills. Like, I'm the president of the BYAC, the council here in Barstow. So I have amazing people skills, but I don't believe that I should change the way I speak. Like, I use Ebonics. Like, it's my thing. I don't believe I should change that. Like, do you believe that?
I think there's a time and a place for everything, right? So and I let my clients dictate that, right? So I used to get in trouble in my master's program for bouncing my leg in session. Like, you need to keep both of your feet on the floor, you need to cross your legs at the ankle, and you need to sit up straight, and you need to listen. I'm like, Leo, I am not comfortable. If I'm not comfortable, my client's not going to be comfortable. Does that mean that I'm not professional? Most definitely not, right? I'm still going to be attentive. I'm still going to give my clients what they need. So there's definitely a time and a place for everything, right? So how I act with my friends is definitely different than how I act in session, but I'm still me in session, right? If my clients come in and take off their shoes, great, because I hate wearing shoes. So I don't have my shoes on in session. I don't have shoes on right now. You guys don't know that though. You do now. But, like I hate wearing shoes. So I typically don't have shoes on in session. I want to be comfortable in session. I don't want to be, feeling stuffed up, because if I'm uncomfortable in my body, I can't focus on what's going on with the client. So I do wear comfortable clothes. I have a blanket in my session, or like in my therapy room, right? So I have blankets for me. I have blankets for my clients. So if they're cold, they can put a blanket on. If they want to get comfy and cozy, get comfy and cozy, because we're gonna dig in and we're going to start talking about some stuff. So get ready. However you need to be ready, get ready. But how I interact with my boss, how I interact with my county partners, how I interact with other professionals, like it's going to be a little bit different. It's still going to be me. I'm still going to be funny. I'm still going to make facial expressions. I'm still going to be sarcastic. All of those things are still going to exist, because yes, I am who I am, but I am going to tweak that depending on where I go. And that's something that I've had to learn over my career, and if I want to move up and if I want to be taken seriously in certain environments, then I need to tailor how I interact with people in those environments while still being true to myself. So it is a fine line to walk. And yes, you always want to be you. Clients can tell if you're not authentic. And it's not like, like sharks smell blood in the water, but, they do, they can feel it if you are uncomfortable. So if you're not comfortable, they're not going to be comfortable. Yeah. What other questions do we have? This is good. I like this. I like questions. I think we have about 5 more minutes. So what other questions do we have? Or does anybody else have questions?
Can you talk to them a little bit about what I asked you in the last session about your schooling that you went through, how much it cost you,
Gotcha. Oh, yes. The part about me being broke for life. Yes.
Yeah.
So I work for a nonprofit. You do not make a lot of money when you work for a nonprofit. Just going to throw it out there right now. I think the only people who make a lot of money in this field work with the court system. Just to be honest. So if you're going into this to be rich, you're not in it for the right reasons, because you're not going to get rich. But that being said, I do live comfortably. Okay. I'm in my early 30s. I own my own house. I travel frequently. I do pretty much what I want when I want to do it. So I also don't have kids. So I have no one else to support except for me and my dog. And he just cost me $100 in food the other day. So I'm really reevaluating the food that I'm feeding him, because he's bougie, but whatever. So when I was in high school, I made it a very big priority to get scholarships. My parents, for the most part, did not fund any of my education. I had to do that all on my own. So I got scholarships and I got loans. My undergraduate education was expensive. My graduate education was expensive. I went to very expensive schools because I also am bougie, which is probably why my dog is bougie. So I think when I left undergrad after scholarships, I worked my way through college as well. I probably had, I don't know, what did I say earlier? 40 grand, maybe 50 grand in debt when I left my undergraduate. And then my graduate was probably about 40 grand per year. I owe more on my student loans than I currently owe on my house. So I have a good chunk of student loan debt. But that being said, I was able to get my credit score up. I was able to buy a house. I was able to buy my car, right? I've had 2 cars in that time period. So I've always bought new cars. I travel frequently. I have different priorities. So I'm able to match my lifestyle to my budget. I also have a side hustle, so I teach as well. So that helps finance my travel expenses. But it can be costly. But my one recommendation is look for all of the scholarships that you can. There are apps nowadays that will help you find scholarships. So apply. I got scholarships for things that I didn't even remember applying for. But you know what? That $500 came in handy when I needed more noodles to eat in school. So just keep that in mind. Apply for whatever you can. Apply for the grants that you can. I teach at VVC, so we've got good programs available at VVC. We've got good programs at BCC, Valley College, right? So there are ways to go about doing this cheaply. So you could get your AA with almost no money out of pocket, just paying for books, move on to a 4-year degree, and then get your master's, assuming you want to get your master's. I think that was the other thing that we talked about a little bit earlier. The more independently you want to work, the higher a degree that you need. So if you want to have a private practice, you need to have at least a master's. You can work in community mental health. You can work for CFS, DMCC, Victor. You can work for organizations like that, the county, with a bachelor's degree or with an AA degree. The higher degree you have, the more money you make, the more independently you can work, but you also typically have more debt attached to that. And you make more money, yes, but that doesn't mean you make a lot. I think this year I make just about 80 grand, right around 80 grand as a supervisor. I've been a supervisor for 4 years at this point. I think our starting clinician, so someone straight out of their master's program, is making about 50 grand currently with our agency. And my site, or this region, the High Desert region, is one of the highest paid regions in our agency, because it's hard to fill positions in the desert. So fiscally, it doesn't always make the best sense, but you can definitely do it smarter than I did, or do it cheaper than I did, and still end up in the same place. So at the root of therapy, right? People have to want to do things differently. I think as family members or as friends, we can point out, like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. We could maybe help them or offer to go with them because, a lot of times, like I said earlier, people are, they think that it's only for crazy people, or they're going to appear weak, or they're going to be made fun of if they go to ask for help. So sometimes all it takes is like, hey, you know what? I heard about this place that's really cool, or I've been to a therapist and they were really helpful for me, or even talking to a school counselor, like, hey, so-and-so is available at school. Do you want me to go with you? And sometimes that's all they need is someone to go with them and kind of hold their hand, metaphorically, while they're getting that help. But we can't force people to change, and we can't force people to get the help that we think they need. Hopefully they'll get there in their own time, and we can support them and encourage them to do that. But sadly, we can't make people change. It'd be a lot easier. My job would be a lot easier if I could, but that's not one of those things we can do.
Yeah. My question was going to be is your focus is marriage and family, but when you're going to school for a degree in psychology or behavioral health, do you have to declare a specialty right away, or is that something that you can choose later on and then declare what you want to specialize in?
You do that later. So your master's is really specialized. When you do your bachelor's, you're learning all about psychology, all the different things that make humans tick, in essence. So your bachelor's is super broad. And then when you go into your master's, depending on which master's you go into, it's very specific. So if you want to do a master's in social work, you're going to learn about social work. If you do a master's in clinical psychology, it's going to be super focused on what that job is like and what you need to learn to be a clinical psychologist. So it's your master's education that's going to be super specialized. And then even after you get your master's, you can make choices to specialize in populations or therapy techniques, and then you would seek out additional training for those specific things.
Are there any careers that you could get into that only need a bachelor's, or do they all need masters?
So if you want to do therapy, if you want to be a licensed therapist, then yes, you need to do your master's degree. But you can work as a social worker with a bachelor's degree. You can work as a behavior specialist or a life coach with a bachelor's degree. So there are options. It just depends on what level of care you want to provide and how independently you want to be able to practice. If you want to be in a private practice and you want to own your own business and run your own show, you definitely need to get a master's and be licensed. Mm-hmm. But like, and I can't remember her name, but the major from the Army was saying, like, they only accept doctorate level. Mm-hmm. So that's something to consider too. If you want to work with the prison system, you need a doctorate level degree. So the armed forces and like any kind of those paramilitary, the higher degree you have, the better. Mm-hmm. And if you want to teach at like a four-year university, if you want to teach at like a USC or a UC or Cal States, you need to be doctorate level 2 in order to do like full-time faculty or tenure track faculty. So different options. There are different ways to start. And some agencies we do a little bit of education support. The county, I know, does some education support. So different agencies, different places that you work for. Sometimes if you get in with like an AA or you get in with your bachelor's, they'll help pay for your education as you continue to move up in the field.
Well, that's good. That's good to know, right?